Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Duality. I am bobdub, your host, and I am joined again, as always, by Roger from Roger Hansen Live. Hey Roger, how are you?
I'm alright. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. It's quite a cold day here. We're sliding down into winter. You're in spring now, aren't you?
Yeah, it's still a little nippy, but it's not cold or anything. We've had a lot of rain.
Right. Yeah, we've had quite a lot of rain the last couple of days. It's getting pretty cold. Anyway, yes, it's actually a lovely day, and welcome to all of you viewers who have joined us. It's wonderful to have you with us. It's so great. Sorry for the delay in starting today. We've had a few little audio issues, but we're going to have a brilliant show today. We are going to be talking about paradoxes. So I'm sure you know what a paradox is. A paradox is two irreconcilable statements or propositions that make up one whole statement. So they're often very absurd or contradictory statements. Like, for instance, in quantum physics, you've heard about people talking about how particles can be in two places at the same time. Or I'm sure you know Schrodinger's cat, the experiment where you put a cat in a box with some radioactive material, and then you have to think about whether that cat is dead or alive. And in fact, the consequence of the thought experiment is that the cat is dead and alive at the same time until you open the box and find out for sure whether the cat is dead or alive. So we have these very strange ways of thinking, and they're very, very helpful, especially when you're thinking about things like dualities. I'll give you another example. The saying, "this is the beginning of the end," is absurd and contradictory. And yet we can see that if an ending is not instantaneous, but happens over time, then that ending will have a beginning. So once we start delving into the paradoxes and unpacking them a little bit, we see the huge message in these opposing dualities. Often, this message is a religious truth. So, one of the silly things, a silly example of it is, "I always tell lies." From a moral point of view, that's quite a good sort of religious, spiritual way of thinking, to be aware of our tendency to tell lies. But if you delve into it and you see that the person has used the word always, "I always tell lies," that means that this statement, that "I always tell lies," is a lie. And therefore, I don't always tell lies. In Buddhism, they've got a really great little talk that they talk about when I think the Buddha was explaining the idea of the difference between a person who believes that they are something and have an identity and are a self, compared to the Buddha's idea of that, like, we have no actual self. We're just this sort of free floating conglomeration of parts. And the idea, the image that the Buddha used to explain that, was a king who was asking him about this complex issue. And the king came in on his chariot, and the Buddha said, "Well, for me to explain it to you, you need to take your chariot apart." So the king took his chariot apart into wheels and reins and all the rest. And the Buddha said, "Okay, so now where's your chariot?" And he said, "Well, there it is." He said, "But no, it isn't. That's not a chariot. Those are bits of a chariot." So we have these very strange, very mind-blowing ways of um, looking at these strange truths and understanding how to how to understand the great secrets of life. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. So Roger,
Yeah.
welcome to the show. What is your opinion of paradoxes? What is your favorite paradox?
The one that I really enjoy is where when one door closes, another one opens,
Mm-hmm.
and that is what really stuck out to me when you were talking there, because I've heard that quite a bit. Um, like especially
Right.
especially when I sobered up, like they would say, where one door closes, another one opens up. The beginning of the end was pretty much what I had to go through when I hit rock bottom. So that's how it related to me whenever I heard those kind of phrases.
Mm. Mm. It's strange, isn't it? It's when you're in the situation, you don't think that there are any resolutions. It seems as if everything's so hard and so contradictory. But once you've solved the problem, it all makes sense looking back. Don't you think?
It does in the end, but like nothing really makes sense when you stop and you look back at everything. It just like it didn't make sense back then, and when you look at it and you see things like from looking back, there's situations that happen where you stop and you think, man, what the hell happened? You know what I mean? It's like Chris Farley in that one, what was it, where his brother was a politician, and they sent him out to the country to keep him out of the public because he was really stupid. And
Yes. Yes.
he was standing on the top of this cliff, and he slips and he falls down, and he's like grabbing all these branches and everything, trying to stop himself from falling. And he kept falling, and by the time he got to the bottom, his feet popped up and he was able to stand up. And he took his hand and he smacked himself on the head and he said, "What the hell was that about?" You know,
Yep.
does that make sense?
Ex- it makes exact sense. It sounds like my life.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing when you stop and think. That's kind of how I interpret a lot of that stuff, because like
Yeah.
um, it would be great if everything makes sense, but sometimes life, what you want in life isn't exactly what you're gonna get. You know what I mean? Like it's sometimes the things you wanted in life wasn't what you needed. So
Right. Yes, exactly. That is so weird. Hey, that is so weird. Okay, so when you were telling that story,
hmm
I was thinking about the paradox of suspense. When when you're hearing a story, you wonder what's going to happen next. And the good thing about a story, one of the good things about the story is that the the punchline, you
hmm
watch the movie because something's going to happen. However, it's really interesting in the paradox of suspense because if you watch that movie again, you will still have that same feeling of suspense, despite the fact that you already know what the end is going to be.
yeah,
Isn't that weird?
yeah.
It's as if our bodies just remember things and act on our past experience. Hey,
Well, a lot of what we've been discussing I mean, Chris Farley just bounces right in my head, because like he seemed to be one of those persons when it came to paradoxes, you know what I mean? Because like
mm.
in his shows, there were situations where you were like that. You were on watching the show, and you're like, man, don't let that happen, or man, you get that suspense. So,
Yes,
and
yes,
like there's a part in Black Sheep where uh, his partner, the little blonde-headed dude, freaking owns a car, and he was supposed to pump gas. So
Mm.
uh, when he gets out of the car and he goes in to get a map, Chris Farley freaking goes to pump the gas and he couldn't reach the gas thing with the gas line. So he's gonna put it in reverse and back it up, but he forgot to close the door. And when he backs up, the door bends forward. And every time I see that part, there's a part in my head saying, "Close the door, close the door." And I know that it's not going to happen because I've seen the movie like 50 times, but I still freaking just want them to close the door once,
When my kids were really little, I used to do after school care for working moms. So I used to pick up their kids with my kids and take them home and look after them for the afternoon. And once there was this little boy, I don't remember his name, but he was the cutest little 5-year-old. One of those little boys who just looks like a teddy bear, and you
Mm-hmm.
just want to he was too cute. And he listened, he came to my home and he listened to the story of I had the cassette tape of the little gingerbread boy. And the little gingerbread boy runs away from everything, and then he tries to get across the river, and he can't get across the river, but the fox comes along and says, like, if you jump on my back, then I'll swim across the river and take you over. And the little gingerbread man says, don't be silly, I know you just want to eat me. And the fox says, no, I don't. So the gingerbread man jumps on his back, he swims into the river, then he pretends he's sinking, and then he eats the gingerbread man. Anyway, this little boy listened to this story about 20 times, and he came to me and he said, the gingerbread man never figures out that the fox is going to eat him. Doesn't matter how many times I listen to the story, the
Mm-hmm.
fox is still going to eat him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's kind
Why
of
doesn't
like
he go?
yep, that's kind of like the snake and the kangaroo.
Yeah.
The it's in the middle of winter and the kangaroo's hopping along and he looks down or she looks down and she sees a snake freezing on the ground, and the
Mm-hmm.
snake looks up at her and says, please put me in your pouch so that I can warm myself
Right.
up. And she says, no, I know if you put me in, or if I put you in my pouch, you're gonna bite me. And he
Mm-hmm.
goes, no, I promise I won't bite you. And she finally agrees to do it, so she puts him in her pouch, and the snake ends up biting her. Well, after he bites her, she goes, "Why did you do that for me? You were freezing and ready to die, and I was warming you up." And he says, "Yes, but I also have to remind you I'm still a snake." A snake.
So, yeah, it's amazing. That reminds me of the Stockdale paradox. The Stockdale paradox says that you must never confuse the faith that you will win out in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever those might be. That's another thing, we have to be able to look at this brutal reality that the snake is still a snake, and
Mm-hmm.
all the compassion in the world won't change the snake from being a snake. And yet, it's still important to be that compassionate person, that you care about the snake that's freezing to death. You might not want to put it in your pocket, but you can't lose. You can't lose the ideal even when you're confronting the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a really crazy saying, but a lot of people say it, and it's true if you think about it. Everybody hates hearing it, but it says if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it's a duck. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
so.
That's similar to Occam's razor, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think what Occam's razor says, the simplest and most obvious solution is generally the solution you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, that
Yeah.
one's kind of like, don't overthink it. You know what I mean?
Mm,
That's
yeah.
exactly it. If it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it's a duck.
It's a duck. Indeed, indeed,
I
indeed.
usually put a cuss word in there so it sounds cool though. Just makes me feel better.
Need those emphasize.
Yeah.
So
Go
carry
ahead.
on.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to change over. I was just going to go on to the next one. The observer's paradox, that the outcome of the event or experiment is influenced by the presence of the observer. So the fact that you're there and you're looking at the thing and you're noticing that it's walking like a duck and it's talking like a duck, in terms of quantum mechanics, you looking at it makes it into a duck,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of ridiculous, really, because we know that looking at things doesn't make them become those things. And yet, from a mathematical point of view, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the outcome of an event is influenced by the presence of the observer.
Well, they've actually done the split experiment and found out that
Mhm.
that is actually true. Like, have you ever heard of the double split experiment?
Yes, I have, but remind me of it. It's when they fire particles.
Into a wall that has two slits. Now,
Right.
now these particles, when they go through, they're supposed to go into the slits, and they'll leave traces of
Right.
the particles behind it. They actually found out that when they did it, okay, if nobody was there watching, or a camera
Hmm.
wasn't on the thing watching,
Yes.
and they weren't watching. However, they did the experiment where they found out that the particles weren't behaving the way they were supposed to be. Like they weren't there. They had to have somebody to watch them in order
Watching.
to do what was expected, which is I thought was weird.
It is so weird. It is so weird. I can't, like, there's a part of my brain that just refuses to accept that reality. I
Mm.
keep on trying to think of, like, what could it be about observing something that changes it?
It's strange. I
It's,
I still want to do more research onto it. I dabbed a little bit into it, but I didn't go the whole way on the
yeah.
subject. But it really is interesting, and they.
Well, Otto's researching it as well. Maybe once we've come to the end of this series of shows, we should switch into looking some more in more depth at some of those, because it's really fascinating. Honestly, it's unbelievable. And it
Mhm.
does make you wonder, it makes me wonder whether it's sort of evidence for God. Like, if the universe couldn't be here unless somebody had looked at it and made it be here, then what looked at it? You know,
Mhm.
what is looking at the universe to make it here?
Well, yeah, for me, it kind of goes back to that old saying. Everybody's always bringing up if a tree falls in the
Mm-hmm.
wilderness and you're not there to hear it, did it make a sound? You know.
Make a sound. Yeah.
So I mean, it's that I think a lot of people have been curious about that stuff, and they have come up with a lot of different things too. Like now they're talking about the same frequencies that make up the web, the internet, is all around us. So we could be just a part of a virtual matrix.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And it looks really, really more and more and more as if we are just part of a virtual matrix. But the weird thing is, Roger, it seems that each person has got their own virtual matrix. And all these millions of matrices all seem to just join together somehow.
A connection. You're connected in a network with the wonderful world of weirdness.
So, like, there is no sound at all, ever. Because isn't sound only something that happens inside our heads?
Well, sound is vibration. You gotta understand that. Like
Well,
sound,
the vibrations exist, yes.
you see, vibration creates everything when it comes to like everything. I mean, even like the particles that are moving through the table that you have your computer on, if those particles
Hmm.
stop moving, you could literally put your hand through that table.
Yes.
You know,
Yes, exactly.
the movement of particles in the earth is what prevents you from falling through it and going all the way
Mm.
through the earth and eventually into space.
Mm.
So these vibrations are what makes things solid, and they're what makes things not solid.
But vibrations, okay, so there are sound vibrations, right? And they do
Hmm.
travel through the air, but they don't make any sound when they're vibrations. They
No,
only make a sound if they hit something.
not if we. I mean, we can't hear it, but I mean, what if they are making a sound? I mean, and it's just too low for us to hear. You know, there's a lot of different factors that you can take into consideration. Like there could be noises around us right now going on that we're just not capable of
Yes,
hearing because they're
of
too
hearing.
low. You know.
Roger, if you cut off our ears, right,
Uh huh.
we wouldn't be able to hear any vibrations at all.
Oh,
So hearing something, you have to have ears to hear something.
oh no.
There's no sound until you put an ear in the path of that vibration for the
Hmm.
vibration to hit the ear and make the ear send the sound to your brain.
Hmm.
So basically, the sound doesn't happen until it hits your ear, and then nobody else can hear it except your brain because it went into your ear.
Well, it depends on what you uh, consider sound. I mean, for me and you, yeah, we can say that. But what about a deaf person who uses his hand to touch a speaker in order to feel the music? You know, I mean, is that
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Mhm.
you got to think of stuff like that too. So
But that's not sound, is it? I mean, that
vibration.
would be sensation, a vibration, but it's not actual sound.
I mean, what is it to them though? I mean, are they hearing it in their mind? Are they
Under what?
hearing it? You know.
Well, I know your body feels vibrations. Like when you go to a concert and you feel the vibrations from the speakers,
Hmm.
you can actually physically feel your body trembling from those sounds.
You, you,
Even, yeah, even if your ears are blocked off,
yeah.
it is weird
It's
and
it,
so fascinating.
it's a really good question. I mean, I wish we could talk to somebody who was deaf, and
Wow.
that would
That's
actually be
interesting.
a good question to ask them. What is it they feel whenever they do that,
Mhm.
when they touch
Mhm.
speakers, so that they can feel the vibrations of it.
Mhm.
You know.
It would be fascinating to know that. Anyway, okay, so we're going to go back to paradoxes for a moment. We'll have to line up another show on that. But for
Okay.
today, let me talk to you about the demographic economic paradox.
Oh,
Right.
oh God, this is gonna be
I
fun.
know. Nations or subpopulations with a higher GDP per capita are observed to have fewer children, even though a richer population can support more children. Isn't that weird? We've done everything in our power to make ourselves richer so that we can have more children, and then we've stopped having children.
I've actually checked into that though, not the uh, economics part, but like about reproduction. No,
Yes.
no. There's two things that are really important, and one is self-preservation, and the other one is, or actually, it's survival and self-preservation. But the other one is also immortality. Now, when you use the term immortality in this topic, you're not talking about one person living forever. You're talking about the continuation of the species. Okay,
Mhm.
so with immortality, people have a tendency of not producing as much whenever they are in a safe environment. Whenever the environment is like tropical or freaking good, safe environment where they don't have to worry about it. Now,
Mm.
when a person is in an environment where they have to worry about survival and taking care of themselves and the elements taking and killing them, they have more of a tendency to freaking procreate and have sex. So you'd
Right.
think that it would be the opposite, but it
Yes.
really isn't. It's people
It
who
isn't.
have to really survive, like especially people in cold weathers who are afraid of freezing to
Yes.
death.
Mm-hmm.
They have
Mm-hmm.
more of a tendency of procreating than what a person in the tropical islands eating coconuts and living high on the
Yes.
hog does.
Yes. Absolutely. And your kids are likely to live until they're old.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in those poorer countries, the coconut countries, you've got to have like 10 children to make sure that three get to old age.
Mm-hmm.
It is weird. Okay, here's another one, similar but different. Okay.
Okay.
In countries with income sufficient to meet basic needs, the reported level of happiness does not correlate with national income per person. So the more you would expect that the richer a country, the more happy the people are. But
Mm-hmm.
in fact, what they found is that as you get richer, your levels of compassion decrease and you become more and more dissatisfied and unhappy.
Yeah.
How weird is that?
They get greedy is my bet. Most of them, like I've always said that a lot of people they overlive their means. You know what I mean? You don't have to have like two car garage and 3 cars because you got a kid who's just hitting 16. That's nonsense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You,
Yeah,
you,
yeah, exactly.
you
Yeah.
you don't have to have all that stuff. The basic necessities for any human being is a head over or a roof over their head, food in the refrigerator, pay the bills, which is electricity, freaking
Yes.
utilities like gas and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever other bills that you need. But all that other stuff, those aren't needs. Those are freaking wants. And I think people have a hard time understanding what their wants and their needs are.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yes. Yes,
so
exactly.
and
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 it's strange.
and,
Yeah, Kara?
and they think they're happy. They'll be happy when they get this stuff, but when they get it, all of a sudden they're swamped with bills and they don't understand why. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
so.
yeah. It's true. It's so strange how your mind tricks you. I think that's one of the reasons why I love the Buddhist idea of staying in the now, because your mind tricks you about what's going to come in the future and sends you all these fantasies and imaginations. And it tricks you about what happened in the past by misremembering and confusing things. And the only thing you can really trust is your experience of this instant, this now, this moment, being
Mm-hmm.
here. Now,
It's
there's
true.
the preparedness paradox that says when you prepare to avoid a catastrophe, and you therefore lessen the damage that's coming with the catastrophe, then after the catastrophe, you say, oh, well, it wasn't so bad because look, we lessened the damage.
Yeah.
I've, I've, I find that with the whole COVID thing that we've just had, when it first started and all those hideous reports were coming out of Italy
Mm-hmm.
and all those pictures of the nurses who had their masks on and then everybody did all this stuff to change what was happening in the pandemic, changed it, and now we look back and say, well, it wasn't that bad. And it wasn't that bad, but we also intervened. Okay, we
Mm-hmm.
also made it worse in some ways, right?
Yeah.
But it's just what I'm saying is that at the beginning, it looked really scary from a lot of the things people were saying. And then it turned out to not be as scary afterwards.
I think a lot of things are fear based. Like
Mhm.
you was talking about faith. You know, where there's fear, there isn't faith, and where there's faith, there isn't fear, is what a lot of people say. But
Mm.
I also know that like fear is also a healthy thing too. It's not good to run around without a little bit of fear. You know what I mean? It keeps you from frickin' the gorillas attacking you because you don't frickin' have the sense in your head to frickin' be afraid of them. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes,
So you want to run out
absolutely.
there and club them, and you know a gorilla's like 10 times stronger than you. He's gonna beat the crap out of you. So
And if you don't fear him, you'll be dead.
yeah,
So it's actually like saving your life.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it's a healthy fear, you know, and y-
agree.
yeah,
Yes.
there's just some things you don't do. You don't jump up and get all courageous because freaking, you know, that's what you're supposed to do. If you know that something's dangerous and there's something in you that makes you afraid, you need to at least recognize it and then determine if it's a healthy fear or not. Like, should I be
Yes.
afraid?
Yes. Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. Yes. Or how should I act
Yeah.
because I'm afraid?
Right.
Because, there are unhealthy ways to respond to your fear. Like you
Right.
say, be all like, I'm so cool, I can deal with this. I don't need to be afraid. And then, yeah, actually did
Yeah.
need to be afraid. Yeah. Yeah.
It was like you don't go into the projects with a carload of Bibles and try to frickin' spread the gospel to a bunch of gangbangers. You know what I mean? There's a
Mhm.
good chance they're gonna shoot you.
A good chance. Unless you want to go straight to heaven, because, or,
Well,
yeah,
that could be that could be the motive. You know,
yeah,
I mean,
shortcut.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I wouldn't suggest it if you don't want to go to heaven just quite yet.
So, talking about the Bible, there's another amazing paradox that Jesus was completely a human, but completely God.
Yeah.
I've always thought that neither of those things can be true, because if he was the Son of God, then obviously he couldn't have been completely human. But if he was God, then, well, if he was human, then how could he even think that he could understand God? He had to be somehow divine in order to understand what he was talking about. So, like, neither of those things can be true, and yet both of them need to be true for the story to make any sense at all.
Well, monotheism was something that a lot of these New Age religions were trying to move away from. Okay,
Right?
Judaism was a monotheistic religion, and so was
Yes.
Zoroastrianism. And
Yes.
then these hip new, you know, cool Christians, or actually, I wouldn't even
Mhm.
call them Christians at the time, because Jesus technically wasn't a Christian. Like
No.
Christianity started hundreds of years after he was already
Yes.
gone, you know. So, but he was this hip new upcoming, you know, guy who uh, didn't want his beliefs to be monotheistic, I guess, you know. I
Mm.
mean,
Mhm.
so back then the number three was really spiritual to a lot of people, especially to people who were into Gnostic religions and stuff like that,
Yes.
who believed that numbers were important, you know. And
Yes.
you also had, well, we've done a few episodes where we talked about what's his face, he's the Pythagoras. Pythagoras was
Yes.
big on that, and the only reason why he didn't agree with the Gnostics and the way that they uh, treated the number three or was because of how they handled the Trinity. Okay, they didn't think that they were very good about that, you know. So um, there was a whole lot going on back then where, and me personally, it's when it comes to a lot of the writings and stuff, you really do have to educate yourself and learn what's going on, because there's things in those books that most likely were more inspired by man than by God, you know. So
Mhm. Indeed.
so all of these things are thoughts and ideas that were going on in people's minds during that time period, you know.
Mm.
So
It's another thing that fascinates me is how a person can write down in a book, God says this and this, right? Whatever it is, let there be light, right? And then another person comes along and reads what the other person has written and then believes that God said that thing. There's no proof, there's no source, there's no argument, there's no convincing. It's just some guy wrote down a statement. The next guy came along and believed it.
mm-hmm.
It's what I was saying to you earlier about minds. Goodness, they play tricks on us.
Well, it happens not just in religion. I mean, here just a little while ago, you know, Robot, he was trying to
Mm-hmm.
debate with me over over aliens. You know what I mean? Ufology and stuff. And I'm like, dude, he's like, you got a source for that? I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? Asking for a source when it comes to ufology is like asking for a source when it comes to freaking, you know, remote viewing. I was like, come on, dude, you know what I mean? Seriously, you know? And this has to do with like paranormal and supernatural stuff. It has nothing to do with like religion directly. And
Mm.
he's tell me a source. You know what I mean? I'm like, what are
Oh,
you talking about, dude? You know, I mean, we're talking about stuff that can't be proven
yeah.
anyhow. So, I think that that's just the way people are. You know, they just they get they let things get away from them from
Yes,
themselves. You know what I mean?
yes. Don't forget, yes, that these things don't have any proof. It's
Right,
how people want to prove things that don't exist.
right. Or may
It's
not have existed. I'm not gonna say that like
yes,
it
yes.
was real or
Maybe.
not, because people get touchy about that stuff. You know what I mean? They're pretty hardcore.
It's very interesting how people use language, Roger. Because for me, I love psychology. I love psychology because it's about thoughts. But as soon as you put those thoughts into language, something seems to happen in people, as if there's some belief in something that's said. Because you talk about what they were talking about in the Bible and Jesus and this understanding of these numbers and spiritual stuff and all that stuff that happened then. It's fascinating, and I think that there's a huge message there. I'm not dissing it, but it's not the only group of people. Those Middle Eastern people and European people who tried to deal with Judaism and Christianity are not the only groups of people. Like the Egyptians themselves
Mm-hmm.
spent ages talking about uh, the sacrifices of the sun and the trinity of mother, father, child, and the all these very interesting concepts that you find in the Bible. You can find them in Egyptian mythology, you can find them in Sumerian mythology, the Buddhists, the Zens, the all these deep dilemmas of human life have been dealt with by different people and different religions. But you dig deep enough and you see that it's the same human angst and anxiety that's
Mm-hmm.
underneath those different words.
it gets pretty ridiculous when you know what you're looking for. You know what I mean? And you go through and you because see when I say that, what I'm doing is I'm trying to discern information, and it always comes
Mhm.
back to discernment, no matter what.
Mm.
Um, so
Mm.
when you're reading through this stuff and you're looking for stuff that just isn't like well, it's not original. It's something that was developed by somebody before them, or
Yeah.
it's an idea that spurred from a different source than just them. When you see
Mm.
that, it just over and over again, it just kind of makes it to where it confirms to you, maybe everything you thought that was
Mhm.
real isn't really real.
Completely real. Yes, exactly.
Because I
And is
mean,
that carry on?
you were talking about paradoxes, and this is about duality. Ignorance is bliss. I mean,
Mm.
that's
Mm.
another one.
Oh,
When you
that's a
stop and
good one.
think about it, is like learning really a good thing, or is being ignorant
Mm.
a state of
The
bliss
bit-
to where you don't have to
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. Yeah. Or is it a false bliss? You think that it's bliss, and then you're like, oh, wow, if only I'd known.
Hmm. Well, sometimes people don't want to learn. You know,
Don't know. Yeah.
there's stuff out there that people don't want to know, and the reason why they don't want to know it is because it goes against their beliefs and it hurts them.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
so
So do you think with your research that you've been doing in ufology, do you think that the collapse of religion is one of the reasons in the rise of people's interest in alien species? Do you think that we're longing to be connected to something different from us? And now that God is politically incorrect, aliens have sort of taken the place of God? What's your reading of it?
well, for me, and I mentioned this, it was a while back, but
Mm.
I honestly believe that like humans were programmed to worship something. There's something in us that tells us we have to worship something.
Mm.
It could be our possessions, it could be food, it could be alcohol and drugs, it could be the U.S. government, it could be, or any government for, reference. It doesn't matter which one. It could
Yeah.
be God, but they have to worship something. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And it just seems to be something that's just programmed into our mind because not too many people are able to freaking say that they don't worship something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one thing that I did learn whenever I was doing a lot of my research was how many people who procra- proclaimed to be atheists, how they went through a lot of problems with mental issues and
Oh.
issues like that. Like what's his face? He's the one that came up with what is it? Natural selection and all that. What was his name again?
Yeah.
Darwin. Okay. People don't realize the story with him. Like after his
Mhm.
daughter died, is when he started getting real resentful about God. Okay, and
Oh.
that's when he started making like off color remarks about religion and stuff like that. Whereas before that, he actually wanted to get the admiration from people who were religious scientists, but
Right.
then after his daughter died, he actually got pretty upset about it, and he went through a lot of mental issues because he had to go through a transition where he believed in something and then he stopped believing in something, and
Mm.
it happens to a lot of these people who try to say that they are atheists. Like there's a part in your brain that tells you, man, You know, because you've been raised up on these beliefs. Your family's been raised up on these beliefs. It's a part of you, and you're giving it
Yes.
up. You know, and it,
Yes.
it causes a lot of mental and physical problems. There's tons of people who claim to be atheists that
Yeah.
if you just research, you'll see that they've experienced these problems.
Yeah. And just are using different words
Hmm. It's
to try and express this belief that you say is this need for worship. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
I really believe that there is something inside the human mind that is programmed into each of us that tells us we have to worship something. I
Mm.
really do believe that.
You know, it's different for me. Okay, I mean, maybe it's not different for me, but my thought process at the moment where I've got to with myself is that I don't want to worship anything. I
Hmm.
don't feel that I want to believe in a God that wants me to worship it.
Hmm.
Because I'm like, what's wrong with you? Yeah, I don't want to be involved with that sort of narcissistic, weird thing. However, even though I have those feelings that I'm trying to work through, and I'm not trying to say I'm right or wrong to have that, that just is a place that I'm at in contemplating God. Is that
Hmm.
like, why would a God want you to worship them? But the other part of it, the why I still believe in God, even though I have all those questions and doubts and problems, is that if I meditate and if I calm my mind and if I come into the presence of God without my preconceived thoughts and without my words and my rational beliefs, I feel as if I've been changed or helped or encouraged or nurtured. It's just, I have an emotional response to feeling that I am near to God, which is a positive thing for my day. So that's interesting to me. That's a different paradox for me, is about how my experience of wanting to be near God is so completely different from my words of trying to describe my experience of what I think about God.
You know what that is, don't you?
No,
It's called
explain to me.
it's called the sound of silence.
Oh,
Yep.
really?
If you want to do little exercises in that type of topic, next time when you remember to do it, like turn your TV on and turn the volume down and watch
Oh,
TV with the volume all the way down, and
wow.
you'll see something.
Okay, I'll try that. We'll talk about it next time.
Just turn the volume down and don't listen to it. Just watch the screen.
All right, I'll give that a go. That's interesting.
But
All right, so, yeah.
it's the sound of silence. That's what it is. They've actually got a song by Simon Garfunkel, I believe, too.
Oh, yes, I know that. Yes, I know that song. All right, you mentioned that for some people, the government, the US government becomes their God, right? This
Hmm.
made me think of this paradox. Where is it? Yeah. Um, oh, goodness, I can't find it. Here we go. This is known as the Downs paradox. For a rational, self interested voter, the cost of voting normally exceeds the expected benefit of voting. And yet, people carry on voting.
So the cost of voting, what exactly are they referring to when they say the cost? Are they talking monetary?
Oh, no, I think they're talking emotionally, that you
Ah,
really want your guy to win. And so you vote for him and you back him, and then either he loses or he wins and then doesn't do what he said he would do. So you have that huge disappointment once you voted.
well, for me, I have kind of that issue, but not because they lose, but like I have this part in my brain that says it's a fixed system.
Yes.
because I'm against political parties, okay, and I've actually done research on it, and I don't like the way my government has handed all of the voting over to political parties when they aren't a part of the government. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, Political parties should not have the power to say who gets to be in debates and who doesn't. Everybody
Right.
should be welcome to
Should
it.
be. Yes.
You know,
Yes.
um, and that's what they've done, and it's turned into a popularity contest now. Instead of my vote counting, all of my votes determines a person who is sitting up in Springfield, Missouri, who might vote on my behalf. Okay,
Yes.
but for me to get my vote to count, he's got to get a certain amount of votes, and if he doesn't, all the votes that he represents gets thrown away.
Yeah. Yes.
They're
And we
gone.
all know this, and we all hate it, and we all know the system is rigged, and we all know that the only people who benefit are the politicians,
Hmm.
and yet voting happens
Yeah,
regularly, and people just do it and
I
go along complaining about it, but just do it.
I do it. I just
Do
what
you?
I, like this right here is the first in a while. I'd say about 4 months that I've complained about it. But I do like complaining about my vote and how it sucks and like it's a
I
rigged
don't
system.
vote.
I love it. I have no problem with complaining about it whatsoever.
Me too.
I think it's something that brings joy to me to get on the internet and tell people, you know what, your voting system sucks. I love that. You know, more people should do it.
Yes. But then once we've said that, then we should instantly start talking about decentralization
Oh,
and
that
small
stuff.
communities.
I mean, come on now. You know,
Come on, Roger. Don't stop me.
don't. I've heard your take on decentralization, and well, you might as well say it because it's
I'm
just
joking.
no, say it. It's actually something you really do believe in, so you need to
I do
say it.
believe in it. Yes,
So,
I do believe in it. What I believe in is that we don't we don't need to persist in doing something that's not working.
right.
The system that we have was a good system, and people tried to set it up, and it's been subverted and it's been broken, and we can't fix it. And so we need to walk away from it, and we need to do something better. And the only thing that we've got better at the moment, the only option that we've got at the moment is to rely on the power of the masses, the power of the people. But we know that the power of the people doesn't work in huge, big mobs. And so to counter that, we build small communities, small, diverse communities. So over here, there's a community of green people, and over here, there's a community of blue people, and over here, there's a community of purple people. And all those people are able to bond really closely to each other and make these little decentralized cells where they can fulfill each other's needs. But they also then interact with each other. And so you have small decentralized communities that make bigger decentralized communities that make bigger. And so you have this whole great network effect that then slots into the hierarchies and makes communication between people productive.
Mm.
There we go. That's my little spiel, Roger.
That's and every time you say stuff like that, it reminds me of the Sumerians. That's how they did it. Like it was city states, and each city had their own gods that they worshiped, and and they had their own form of government.
Yeah.
It got to the point where like this city worshiped this god, and then if you wanted to
Whoops.
worship this god, you went
Are you
over here.
there,
Yeah, I'm here. Are you?
Roger?
Yeah, I'm here. Are you?
Whoops. Oh, what a pity. Roger has dropped out.
No, I haven't.
Oh no. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, I'm here. I never I never went out.
Oh, okay. So
But
your volume you went away.
did you get that last part?
We got up to city states.
Yeah, they were city states, you know what I mean? And like each separate city had their own form of government and the gods they worshipped and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Pretty cool. I also think that it's interesting that even that system broke down. It's as if with people, or like we're talking about this paradox thing, you have to keep on searching. You can't just get a set of instructions or rules that work forever. You always have this duality, this push and pull, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to, like, when we have a big government system like we've got that gets to the limit of its functioning, then we have to change and make another system, knowing that our new system will also get to the limits of its functioning, and we're going to have to change again. But that is what we do as people. That's what we do so well as people, is that we think something up, test it out, and then make changes, think something else up, test it out, and then make changes.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that, it's taken us a few thousand years, but look at us. We're pretty amazing the way we've tamed this planet,
I hope
because it's quite a hostile planet.
I hope that they realize though on the way that like we've actually done quite a bit. Don't mess it up. Like we've
Mm-hmm.
actually had a better life than a lot of people
Yes.
in human history. You know what I mean?
So,
So
so much better. Yes. Yes. Well, that's the important thing, is not to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
right. And that's another
Yeah.
thing. Like I mean, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, how many people really sit and just wonder in the back of their head if they could get away with just smacking a baby one time?
Well, I would say a lot
You know,
myself.
being
Yeah.
honest. That's the one thing that really makes you stop and think. I mean, like, because it just seems like that's what they're doing when they do stuff like what they're doing today. It's like in the back of
Indeed.
their heads they're saying, I want to smack that baby right in the face. You know.
Exactly. Well, Roger, that in the wild, most baby animals don't make it. Like, for instance, with lions, all the little the cubs, are looked after in nurseries, and the lionesses take turns in being the head of the nursery.
Hmm.
And a lot of the disciplining of the babies kills the babies. About a quarter of the babies become adults
It's rough.
just out of mistakes, because the mom hits it too hard with her paw, and that's it, bye, gone.
Yeah.
So it is part of a restrained bestial an unrestrained bestial nature that we have from, yeah, from. Okay, so I have one final paradox that we can quickly discuss before we finish, Roger. And
Okay.
this starts with the joke about hedgehogs, or porcupines, maybe it is. Roger, how do porcupines have sex?
I don't know. How do porcupines have sex?
Very carefully.
That was funny.
Yes, it's very funny. And it comes to it's the basis of the hedgehog paradox. In real life, hedgehogs huddle together to create warmth during cold weather, but they have to remain a certain distance apart, because otherwise they will harm each other with their spikes. So they have this need to huddle for warmth, but this need to be apart to avoid harm. And
Hmm.
this is the dilemma of human relationships. We need each other. We must be with each other. And yet, the closer we are in relationships, the more we can hurt each other. And I
Hmm.
think that goes back to that saying of that the ones that you love the most are the ones that hurt you the worst.
Right.
So
That,
I think that's why lots of people withdraw from society.
well, it's entanglement too. Like a friend of mine, we used to call him Pappy. He used to explain to us like entanglement. Okay, when you take and you put your hands together like you're praying. Okay,
Yes.
you got your hands together right there, and you're bound up right there. That's you're entangled with one another, right? And he says a
Yes.
relationship isn't really about being bound up like that. What you do is you take your hands and put them side by side, and that's two people walking together. Okay.
Right.
Now,
Yes.
and another thing too is like mercy. Okay, have you ever?
Mhm.
Everybody likes using the term mercy, but they really don't understand what that means. Okay, like have you ever
Mhm.
played mercy?
No, no,
Mercy.
I don't.
When you play mercy, you take and you put your hands together, and
Mhm.
the only person that wins at mercy is the one who freaking causes the other one to say mercy.
Oh, right. So mercy is giving in. Right.
Mercy.
Okay.
Okay, so with mercy, uh, you have to just give in because the pain was too great.
Yes.
Okay, so that's mercy,
Yes.
and and
Interesting.
and the whole thing of it is you don't even have to play mercy. You know what I mean? You can. That's the whole
Mhm.
thing. I mean, you don't have to go through pain. You don't have to
No.
do any of that. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
that's kind of what sticks out to me. Like you're walking together. You're not entangled in a screwed up relationship, and it's okay
Yes.
to have distance. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you don't have to be stuck up each other's butt 24/7.
Right. Exactly. And also, the other thing is that even though you experience pain in a relationship, it's actually not that big of a deal.
Oh,
You,
it's horrible. I don't
so
understand how you guys can even do that stuff. Like
what?
have
Have
relationships and stuff. Like
But we have a relationship, Roger?
no, I've walked away from relationships for a while,
Oh, you
man.
mean
I'm
the
not.
love relationships? No,
Yeah.
I'm meaning friendships as well. I'm
Oh
meaning
yeah, yeah.
all
Okay.
different sorts. Yeah, no, 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 not just love. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you that it's
I,
severe.
there's a reason why they created marriage. Okay, that's a commitment. That's something that people need to be ready for when they get involved in that stuff. And that's why the divorce rates have gotten up so much higher is because people don't take that stuff serious.
Seriously, yes. Yes,
You
I know.
know.
But even if you have this wonderful relationship, right, and you love marriage, say, even if you have a wonderful marriage and nothing goes wrong and you just great, you still one of those people's going to die, and the other person's going to be in severe pain because of losing that person they loved so much.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't avoid the pain. The more you love somebody, the more the pain is going to be when you lose them to death, if that's, the final loss.
Well, you do know that there is another duality to love, right? And this is just real world uh, uh, experience right here. That when it comes to love, okay, everybody likes the warm fuzzy feelings, okay, and they when they feel those feelings, that's love. But when you lose somebody, it could be because of death, it could be because somebody broke up with you or divorced you or whatever. That's still love too, okay? Feeling that pain means that you actually love that person. If you didn't feel that pain, then that means you didn't love them.
Yeah,
So
you didn't love them.
love is also the good feelings as well as the bad feelings, you know. So
Yeah,
it,
it's very interesting. It is. Well, that has been a fantastic discussion today. There are so many more things that we can say, but I think that we should restrain ourselves, save some more material for next week.
mm-hmm.
So, Roger, thank you very much indeed for being with me today. Thank you for this very interesting discussion. And do you have any final words to sign off with?
No, nothing.
No, just goodbye.
All right.
And so until next week, we're done here. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you same time next week. Goodbye.